Schippers. I'm the manager of the seasonal department here at Sunnyside Nursery, and to the right of me,
I'm Sara Christopherson, who Holly calls her right hand, and I also plant up containers for sale here.
today.
We're going to talk about warm season vegetables, so we're going to start with
Warm season vegetables.
what is a warm season vegetable? What are we talking about when we say that?
Warm season vegetables like temperatures at nighttime 50 degrees or above, that's their happiest. And the reason we talk about nighttime temperatures is because that's the coldest than the daytime.
Yeah.
So they still have to survive the nighttime, not just the daytime.
And we still have some nighttime temperatures dipping a little below
We've got a
50,
49er coming up.
yeah, it's not for any length of time, and everything seems
So they won't
good,
really
so.
worry about one night. It's when it's excessive nights. What? You okay? I heard. Warm temperature vegetables typically are going to like some sunshine. That's where the heat comes from. Can you get too much sun? Yes. You can get too hot. I'm going to use a tomato as an example. When tomatoes get hot, their leaves curl. And we've had a lot of people come in, okay, why are my leaves curling? Is your tomato against the wall? That's an extra 15 degrees. Is your tomato getting way too many hours of afternoon hot light, sunlight? That will do it. Is there water in your soil? That will do it. It's their defense mechanism to either reserve what water they have, because they don't know how long they're going to be that hot. So you want to make sure it's nothing to worry about. It's not going to kill them. It's not going to make them not produce their tomatoes. It's just their nature's defense mechanism on survival. But when you see that, check the soil. Make sure there is water in that soil, because they will do that hoping that they can reserve what little bit there is. So it's a very typical thing to have happen. Decide where you want to have your garden. Do you want it in the ground? Do you want it in pots? Do you want it in raised beds? Do you have enough sun over here? Do you have enough sun over here? This is the only place I have sun, but I've got a concrete slab. Do a container garden. Do a raised bed garden. So there's different options where your sun is and how to garden.
That's what I have. I'm renting right now. I'm in a very small yard, and the warmest, sunniest spot is out on the concrete parking slab, and that's what I use for my tomatoes and peppers and things, because these guys generally like plenty of sun, as opposed to some of the cooler weather stuff. I think maybe we should go over what vegetables fit into the warm season vegetable category, so we know what we're talking about in this class.
We can. You want to do that now or after we discuss the location of your bin? Okay. So you want to talk plants now?
I mean, what's wrong? Anywho, the warm season veggies, the ones that like to be over 50, tomatoes, peppers, squashes, corn, melons, eggplant.
Pretty much everything we're going to talk about.
Yeah, so when you get to things like, a lot of people are still asking about lettuces and broccoli and those kind of things. It's really a little late to start those for this season. Right now we're going into the warm season, and they don't want to be trying to produce into July, August. It's just too warm for them, and you're going to have tough, bitter produce that you don't really want to eat anyway. On a side note, you can start some of those things late summer to be producing into the fall as it gets cooler. But for the most part today, we're going to be talking about the things that really like the summer heat.
And to get back to the location of your garden where you decide to do it, make sure you have a good source of water. I am now currently in my driveway on tables in containers. My water source is right there. I used to garden in the back 40 where there's more sun, but I don't want to drag 200-foot hose out every time I have to water. So I make it easy on myself and do it in my driveway. But it's important. Make sure you have a good local source of water where you decide to put your garden, because it wears on you dragging those hoses. Or the buckets or whatever.
Yeah, once it gets that difficult, I tend to neglect my plants. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's like, do I really want to water? Do I need to? Planting in the ground, if you choose to do that, you'll want to amend the soil with compost or soil booster. Compost is going to encourage the production of microbes and fungi in your soil that will help break down the organic matters. Very good product. It also has chicken manure in it, worm castings, kelp, and alfalfa. Alfalfa is a source of nitrogen and proteins that will help the process speed up for that breaking down.
They're gonna get in there and help make all of these nutrients that we see on fertilizer packages and stuff. They're gonna make that available to the plant to use.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, a lot of like the mycorrhizae funguses, they're even have a symbiotic relationship with your plant roots and attach and extend the plant roots and help them drop nutrients, and in turn are fed by the plant roots, the sugars that the plant's making. So the little microscopic things we hardly even see in our soil are very important. There's been a lot more learning about that kind of stuff in recent years, and getting away from using synthetics that might be harmful to those things. One thing that I was recently reading about was, and not to diss on one thing, but we all know what Miracle Grow is. It's synthetic, and when you mix it in your water, it's blue. That blue is copper. That's a fungicide. So if you're drenching your soil with that, you're killing off those beneficial funguses. So it's great for use topically when you have things like powdery mildew, black spot, things like that. But if you're drenching your soil with it, you're killing off a lot of beneficial stuff, and so you're not actually going to have healthy soil and thus healthy plants. So be careful about what you're putting in your soil, because your soil needs to be healthy to feed your plants.
A soil booster has chicken manure, bat guano, and worm castings, as well as kelp. Kelp helps to maintain the fertilization of your soil as the plant destroys the nutrients and not destroys it, but uses it. So the kelp is going to help for fertility on that. Then there's container gardening. Edna's Best is a great product. It's in the middle. That's what we use here a lot in our gardening when we do our flowers and stuff. It's fine for vegetables as well. That has worm castings and bat guano in it. I'm going to ask you a question here, so you've got to listen to what I'm telling you here. Ultimate is another favorite of mine. This I love for veggies. This is for tomatoes, peppers, as well as the other veggies. Half of this and half of Edna's. This has a lot more goodies in it. So this is going to be beneficial microbes. Sarah already talked about microbes. They're going to get in there and break down your organic matter. It also has mycorrhizae. Mycorrhizae is myco, beneficial fungi, rhizae, beneficial roots. And she mentioned supporting the root system. That is going to help support the root system as well. They also have worm castings, seabird guano, and bat guano in the Ultimate.
A lot of these veggies, especially the tomatoes and peppers, are very heavy feeders. So the Ultimate is going to give them an extra boost just in the soil. Even so, especially in container gardening, we're putting some great soil in our containers, but remember that that's a limited resource. They're not able to go deep down into the soil and get things that are there. They have just this much. So they're going to use it up, and you're going to want to add fertilizers and stuff as well. That I'm not saying just in container gardens.
That's in gardening in general.
Because unless you're doing extensive soil testing, which is a great thing to do, by the way, especially if you're doing in-ground planting, you don't necessarily know what's available in your soil. So we generally add more kind of all-purpose, all the things that the veggies need. So we know that we have it available to them, and we don't have to try to diagnose and troubleshoot later when it's too late to add those things to benefit the plants.
So what did you take out of a lot of those ingredients? What was very similar? It was the same. Everything had something of the same thing in it.
Bat guano, earthworm casting.
Okay, guano, castings, manure, they all come from the same area. That's very important. The poop is very important. Anyone ever see The Martian? You can grow some good potatoes. That gives you your NPKs, your nitrogen, your phosphorus, and your potassium, which all in turn help in the growth of the plant, the budding and blooming of the plant, and the coloration of the plant. So that all is needed to make a healthy plant. Let's talk about some companion planting.
Okay. So a lot of our hot season or summer vegetables are technically things that we eat the fruit from. So things that are produced from a flower. We're usually eating the golden ovaries that contain the seeds. And so, as we probably all know, generally if something's coming from a flower, it needs to be pollinated. Most of the time we think about bees. A lot of people think about honeybees, which are important, but so are our native bees. Bumblebees being big pollinators of things like tomatoes and peppers. They actually can detach their wings and use their muscles to vibrate the flowers and get the pollen to drop. So we need them to come in and help us pollinate so we get that fruit that we can eat. One of the best companion plantings is to grow flowers that are going to entice more pollinators to come in and pollinate our vegetable plants.
There's other ways of pollination too.
Yeah.
You can have the breeze or a critter walking by.
Corn is definitely an exception. They're wind pollinated. So if you're doing corn, make sure you put them. They don't have to be in rows, but put them in decent blocks so they're all hanging out together.
Even you out in your garden, messing around and making things, pollen, squish, all that helps pollinate.
So one of the
Squish? Is that a technical term? It's squish.
one of the big takeaways of companion planting is intercropping and making sure that you have different kinds of plants planted with each other, so it's harder for pest insects to find. One of the things I like to do with the handouts is put plants in categories and families so we know what's related. A pepper is pretty closely related to a tomato, so they often deal with the same pests. So if we put them next to each other, we're kind of putting out a big red flag. Hey, pests, this is what you want right here. So if you intercrop and put the tomato and a squash and maybe a nasturtium and mix things up a bit, those pests are going to have a much harder time finding your plants. It doesn't mean that they won't, but maybe a pest will find one of your pepper plants, but maybe not the other 5 pepper plants because they're in different places. Whereas if they're all in the same place, they're just going to spread through the whole group. So mixing up your plants, you can plant in rows if that's what you like. I don't. I like to put a tall tomato with some smaller things around it, and another tall tomato with some smaller things around it, and really mix up my plants.
We like to decorate.
We're both decorators.
We want our filler, our thriller, our filler, and our spiller.
Pretty much, yeah. I want my garden to be pretty.
I do too.
Aesthetically pleasing.
I do too.
But
That's the first thing you see at my house. You come up the driveway.
But I know some people really like their early rows. Just make sure you're maybe putting different things in your rows. Don't put in 3 rows of peppers. Put in a row of peppers and a row of something unrelated, and then mixing your other companion plants in, your flowering plants, your trap crops being one we haven't talked about yet. Pick on this little nasturtium here. Nasturtiums are great. They give us flowers that are edible, so you can add those pretty flowers onto your salads. They're actually in the brassica family, which is the cabbages and kales and mustards and that kind of thing. And they have kind of a spicy flavor like a mustard does. They also attract the same aphids that those plants attract. So one of the nice things about nasturtiums is you can end up with a crop of aphids on the back of a leaf, maybe not even notice. They tend to charge through it just fine. Meanwhile, you've got that crop of aphids. So when you have things like ladybugs or lacewings or those good critters that come in and eat the ladybugs, they have a reason to stick around, and they have a reason to lay their eggs so that their larval form, that really munches on the aphids will have something to eat. So, one of our inclinations is to find a pest and eradicate it. But if we have sacrificial plants, trap plants like the nasturtium, we can have that housing our aphids, not touching it, letting it be a crop for those beneficial insects to want to come to our garden. So I love planting nasturtiums in with my veggies. And you can kind of go a couple different ways with that. If you want to put them around the perimeter, oftentimes those flying things, they're coming in searching for things, we'll find those first and maybe not venture further into your veggie garden. Or if you get things that just kind of float in on the wind, like aphids, and are kind of land in an area and then just search that little area for what they want, that's when like putting them interspersed works really well. So with the nasturtiums, I like to plant them all in amongst, because then hopefully the aphids are going to kind of land near it and find that instead of my veggies.
And the marigolds are another sacrificial. And you want a buffer?
I do.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, these
I'll
are-
hit it.
So, aphids like the flowers.
And when you see an aphid, you really want to have something that's going to draw it other than what you want to actually grow healthy. Aphids are born pregnant. So you're going to blink and you're going to have 10 times more.
You only need one aphid to float in onto your plant. You have a colony.
I'm glad I'm not an aphid.
Yeah. So marigolds also excrete a substance from their roots that repels harmful nematodes. So having it in the same soil space, say if you have a raised bed or an in-ground garden, planting marigolds through it are really going to be beneficial that way too, as well as being a trap crop for the aphids and something that attracts pollinators. So they're a big workhorse in our gardens.
Yep. So with nature, there's always going to be disease, fungus. We're always going to battle something. That's just nature being with nature. I'm not going to talk about all of the products. I will talk with questions. So if you have questions about what you've had in the past in disease or critters, then we'll bring the product up and then discuss how to use it. Because you can go on forever with all these products and what they deal with. But it's typical to deal with septoria.
Septoria being fungal, which is often goes hand in hand with too much water.
And you see that a lot in tomatoes. It's going to be yellow with little dark spots, and that's septoria.
On the leaves?
On the leaves, yes. And usually starting with the lower leaves.
And then with your squashes, you're going to constantly battle powdery mildew. Now, I was taught this by a grower probably 25 years ago. I don't mean to date myself, but he told me then what he does, and he said that they get different. Again, this is like 25 years ago. Things might have changed in the seed area, but the growers would get a different seed than what would be in the seed packets. And in the seed packets, it was treated where with something, the way they treated it caused more mildew. Because I asked him, how can you grow all this stuff as a farmer and not have it covered in mildew? And he was explaining that to me. Now, what he had told me to do, and again, at this time, we didn't have all these products available in an easier form. He taught me to get a bucket of copper mixed with water, put your hand over the soil, and dip it to help prevent possible mildew. And nowadays, we have products that you just spray. You don't have to go through the hole. and I do that every couple of weeks or once a week. It depends if it's raining or something. And I just spray it until the flowers start. And then you want to stop. You don't want to spray the flowers. If there's an occasion where there's 1 or 2 flowers, I'd put a gloved hand over that flower and spray, but you do not want the spray on the flowers that you can kill the bees.
We do get copper fungicide in a ready-to-use spray, which is really nice if you're doing a small amount. But it also comes in a concentrate. So I like to use either one of those pump sprayers, or something that's gonna be a little bit easier work-wise on you if you have a good crop of pumpkins or squashes or things, and some of those guys can get massive leaves, and you've got a bunch of them that you want to spray. So this might not be the answer for that. Going with a concentrate and a better sprayer might help you out there. But these ready-to-use ones are a great one to have on hand, just for when you've got plants with maybe you're pulling off a couple of affected leaves and you want to spray the rest of the one plant. Great thing to have on hand because you don't really have to think about mixing or anything. You could just grab it and spray it and be done with that chore.
And I can't stress how important it is to do that pre-spraying. It makes a huge difference. It's so disappointing when all of a sudden you go out and everything's just covered in mildew or fungal.
Yeah, it's not going to go away.
It's depressing when you're falling in love with your garden every time you're out there gardening, and then all of a sudden the next day it looks horrible.
Yeah. Once you have the powdery mildew, you have it on there. Things like this will knock it back.
It doesn't go away, and
so it's not producing all the spores and floating them around, but it's still going to be on the leaves and making it harder for the plant to photosynthesize.
And the spores of mildew can carry in the wind a third of a mile, so you can be affecting other people's things. So it's just something you want to keep up on.
Yeah, and we often have people going, well, I think I brought it in with this plant. It's in your soil. It's in the wind. Mulching could be an excellent way to head off some of that if you've got it in your soil, which you likely do. Having just your bare soil and watering will cause splashback up onto the leaves, and that's how another way it'll get on your leaves. But if you plant and then mulch, you're covering that up so you don't have the splashback of the soil as much. So, and mulching can be a layer of compost, which is going to break down and help feed the soil. It can be some bark that's not treated with anything. It can be ground cover plants. Whatever's going to keep soil from splashing back onto your plants, as well as covering the soil and keeping some of the moisture in and keeping weed growth down.
And as I mentioned before, when we were talking about the tomatoes and the curling, that can help too. Especially if it's an area where you're not watering enough and it's dry, and then the leaves are going to do that curl.
Yes,
Again, the curling's not going to hurt anything. It's just telling you that this is what's happening to it. Nature's working itself to be healthy. What next? We want to talk about plants? I'm going to talk about that when we plant.
Does anybody have any questions at this point that maybe we glossed over?
So the copper spray, if you get it on the flower, it will harm the bees, right?
Yes. You don't want to ever spray anything on flowers. Ever. Ever, ever. And the bees are very important to our existence on this planet. So we don't want to kill the bees. Yes.
My zucchini last year produced flowers, but then never produced any zucchini.
Okay.
I had a bunch of flowers and so on.
Were they in the ground?
No, they were in a raised bed.
Okay. They're self-pollinating, but they also need some breeze to help them do that, or the bees. So maybe that didn't happen to them.
I guess. I mean,
zucchinis are like a weed. They'll just.
That's what I'm like the only person in the world that couldn't grow zucchini.
So,
do you know the difference between the male and female flowers?
No.
So you'll see, and mostly squashes, will start out by sending out some male flowers. So it's just a skinny stem with a flower.
That makes sense.
When you get a female flower, it's got what looks like the little baby fruit on it with a flower. So that's the ovary, and when it's pollinated, that's what will swell and grow to your edible.
So I need
fruit.
both.
You need to have both male and female flowers on it at first.
But usually that happens.
Have male, and then it'll start producing females. So,
so it still needs the help from bees or a breeze or.
And what you could do if you're.
Is there any way that I could?
Yes,
sort of?
you can pick off one of the males, take those petals off, and then basically you have the part with the pollen on it, and you can swish that around in your female flowers.
Yeah.
So if you have it blooming at the same time and you want to help it out, do that.
Thank you.
Yes.
Are all vegetable plants susceptible to this powdery mildew, or is it just
Some
like
more than
squash
others.
plants?
Squashes are going to be your first to show it.
Okay.
Some are more susceptible than others.
We definitely see it on tomatoes, especially if there's not enough airflow, which we will get into tomatoes and the pruning and all that thing. We have a decent amount of powdery mildew attractors in the summer.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Again, some are way more susceptible than others. And the cultural environment around them will help a lot in preventing that. Yes.
Yeah, the last 3 years, my tomato plants, the trunk and the branches have just gone soft.
Well, there is a blight that, was it black? No, there's a
No,
blight that
no,
can
after a
cause that.
while, like by the summertime, it gets kind of fuzzy.
So it was later in the season?
Well, actually, it's starting to happen right now with them, that they're softer than.
We'd
I'd
have
like.
to see it, take a picture and email it to
Okay.
us, yeah.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah,
and then
'cause
this
we
year,
can guess,
I
but
tried to
it-
really change out the soil
Uh-huh.
and all, hoping it would help.
Yeah, might not be that, so, email us the picture and rather than us guessing now, we'll be able to
Okay.
see directly.
Yeah, thanks.
Any more questions? Moving on? You wanna start? You want me to start?
I forgot where we're going.
We're gonna go and talk about plants.
Okay.
Then we'll talk about tomatoes and planting. Okay, I love me some peppers. This is a red baron pepper. It's gonna start out green and then turn red. You can eat it green if you want, or wait for it to turn red. Nice sweet bell pepper. This is another pepper. This is a chocolate beauty bell. So it's kind of an orangey brown looking flesh tone to it. Another very sweet bell pepper.
One of the fun things about growing your own veggies is you're not limited to just what you're used to seeing in the store.
Yeah.
Like yes, you can grow bell peppers that look like the ones in the store, but there's a huge variety of things you can grow that you're otherwise not able to get.
This is a golden California Wonder bell pepper, so it's going to be that orangey one that you see. Very delicious. A very sweet bell pepper. And I've got one more bell pepper here. This is a purple star. It's a bright purple one. Very yummy.
And with purple, you get more antioxidants.
Mhm.
So always a good choice if you can grow something purple.
And I love to use bell peppers, and I do a lot of stir fries, a lot of Mexican stir fries. I just love to eat them. They're great in salads. I'm a pepper person. Okay, this is a barracuda. Now, when I put this on the tables there, I put it in the divider of the sweet peppers and the hot peppers. It's not a hot pepper, but it's not necessarily just sweet. It's a spicy pepper. It's a poblano. For those of you who know what a poblano is, the barracuda is a poblano. Chili rellenos, oh, those are good. It's a great pepper. I can't remember if I grabbed one to plant. Speaking of which, I could do a little shopping. Let's talk about that one.
You better hurry because they're going to be out there.
Yeah, this is a mammoth pepper. Nice and spicy, nice and hot. It's a jalapeno.
Something you
type
might
of
see
jalapeno.
with this, there are 2 plants in there. Some people might look at that and think, oh, well, I'll just rip them apart and have 2. I just plant them like that.
Yeah, make that one plant. Any vegetable that's more than one in a pot like this, it's one plant.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're just gonna stress it out and
It's-
take the chance of
It's
nothing
gonna
surviving.
have to take a lot of time repairing roots before it can do anything else if you do that.
Okay, this is Ring of Fire, Circle of Fire. It's a red hot pepper, very hot, nice hot pepper. This is gonna be one of the hottest peppers. For those who love the heat. See, those are all the peppers, I think. Let's do some green beans. This is a Mexibel. Mexibel is a nice, flavorful green bean. I think this was a 70-day, 59-day maturity.
Yeah, as we go through some of those ones that are closer to 2-month maturity, we'll bring them up because those are things that you would still have time to plant by seed.
Yep.
Something like a tomato or pepper, we're long past that.
So it's
they
not-
need a longer growing season. So definitely you need to start with starts at this
Yeah.
point. But for
It-
beans, you could direct seed right now
Yeah,
and get a crop.
it's not that you can't start seed now. It just depends on what it is that you want to start seed. You can see this has 5, but actually it's 1. You do not want to separate those. This is a blue lake. This is what you would typically find in the grocery stores, the canned goods. Just an overall nice sweet green bean.
The blue lake does come in bush and pole.
Yeah.
So bush being one that doesn't really need support, and the beans, if you've got a group together, and I plant them in a group or a couple of groups depending on how many I'm planting, they'll support themselves. Pole bean is going to need something to climb on.
Have you noticed 2 flats out there that say bush, blue lake bush? They look like they're pole to me. Have you noticed that?
I have not noticed
Okay,
that, but I
take a
wouldn't be
look.
surprised.
Well, it's not surprising if they get mislabeled by the grower. This is a Celine. This is another really good bean. I've grown this one. It's a purple bean. It's a fun, delicious bean.
Do you know if that's one that, do all purple beans go green when they're cooked?
Yes. So they're fun on the plant.
They're fun to cook too. I remember that as a kid, my grandma cooking purple beans and watching them turn green.
And you can eat them just off the plant too. This is an eggplant, Rosa Blanca. This is kind of a pinky eggplant, kind of a bell-shaped. Really good for, you can deep fry it with some tempura and put some parm on it. Oh, I do that with a lot of veggies. Just don't tell me anything about the deep fry. Okay, this is a Black Beauty. This is one of the most popular, one of the big, dark, purple. This one that you would typically see in the grocery stores. Very yummy one. Eggplant parm. Oh, perfect for eggplant parm. Right away. Yes. Here's a white one. This is a long, skinny white one. I think this is replacing Ichabod, which was a kind of a dumpy egg-shaped one that was around for years and years and years. You use them just like any eggplant. It's just a different color. And it's a nice skinny one. It's another one that you can, deep fry. Now a lot of eggplant you've got to sweat, or it's too strong. So what you do is you put it on I put it on a paper towel. I sprinkle it with salt.
Or it's sliced.
Sliced, yes. Sprinkle salt, and you'll watch it sweat. It's sweating out the bad tasting stuff. And then you rinse that, pat it dry, and use it for whatever you want. Over here, these have been asked about, and I finally got some in. This is a ground cherry. It looks like a tomatilla growing on the ground, but it's not. It's very sweet. You can make jams. You just eat it as is.
I'm gonna
make
race
jams.
you to these. I didn't know we got them in.
One
They're
flat of each.
so good.
One flat of each. These two are mine.
They're very closely related to tomatillo, so they grow that inside
Yeah.
that husk, but they're real low and spreading. So
And they're very, eat them right. You
Yeah,
can't
they're
eat a
small.
tomatilla right off the plant, but these yum.
so and they when they're ripe they drop to the ground. So you can go and like gather them underneath. They're protected by that husk. So like I've never had a problem with critters getting to them and eating them. Pop them out and eat them. They're just they're so sweet
Yep.
and good.
And this is little lanterns, and this is another ground cherry, and you can tell they're ripe when that husk starts to turn brown and starts to kind of tear.
How deep do the roots go?
Well, if you're growing them in a pot, my pot by the end of time to harvest will be full of roots. So they can go deep. Like a tomato, they can go deep. Like a tomatilla, they can go deep. It's just
They're not quite as vigorous as like an indeterminate tomato.
No,
but they like to have some space.
all right. Let's move on to some squashes. Or what do I have here? Oh, cucumber. Let's do cucumber. Here's an orchid cucumber. It's a very long, skinny cucumber, kind of like an English cucumber. Very little seed. Very good in salads or just eating as is or in sandwiches. This is a fun one. This is called muncher. This is just going to be a little cucumber that you just munch on.
Little snackers.
I like to have things like this in my garden while I'm watering or whatever, so I can snack as I'm doing it. I'm a snacker. Peas never make it into my house.
Cherry tomatoes.
Yeah. This one is, how's your German? This is a new one to me. Vorgenbergstrauben. I might have left out a few syllables. But this is a nice, another smaller one, slightly bigger than the muncher, and a nice sweet cucumber.
The cucumbers are another one that certainly look at your packets if you're wanting to grow from seed. Like, this is a botanical interest, and they list their days to harvest right up here. This one says 60 days. That's from germination. So make sure you're, when it's warm and our soil's warm, they germinate pretty quickly. And then 60 days later, you're going to start getting a crop. So we still have time to do that. Just know that you're not going to be getting your cucumbers until later in the summer.
And this one is a burpless. This is going to be kind of a long curved cucumber. Great for salads, just to eat. Cucumber carrot salads are good. See that? It's the cucumbers. Let's go on to squash. Oh, let's do some melons.
Before you leave, is cucumbers, can you like pickle them? They
Yes.
have pickles?
Yeah.
Which one of those?
I don't have any pickling ones. I don't think I
Okay.
have any in stock right now.
Okay.
They're gonna be little and usually a little bumpy, you know,
We get one called homemade pickles.
Yeah.
Gherkins
Yeah.
are good.
Mexican gherkins, yeah.
Like, so if you wanted to do that, you might. I would encourage you to get a packet of seeds so you can grow a decent
Okay.
amount
They
all
grow
at one
fast. They grow
Okay.
fast.
time. Because then you can plant all the same ones at the same time and be getting a harvest around the same time, so you have
you can-
enough for pickling.
And if you want a cucumber that climbs, climbs a trellis, I don't have it here. I ran out a few days ago. Marketmore is a really good one, and it produces so much. That's the only cucumber I'll grow anymore these days. It's I can use it in anything. Let's talk melons. Now, typically melons did not grow here in the Northwest. Years ago, they started a program in Skagit Valley. The first melon being a watermelon, and they created some melons that can actually take our climate. So this is a cantaloupe. This is honey rock cantaloupe, just like any other cantaloupe. Now some of them are going to be smaller here than, say, in California or the South, but
Especially when you get into the watermelons and stuff.
yeah.
You get little ones that have time to grow and ripen in our climate.
And this is Sugar Baby Watermelon. I grow this one every year, which is a very nice sweet. It's gonna get it's baby. It's gonna get a watermelon about that big. Very sweet, very good. We also have one that grows well here, and we must be out of it. It's a honeydew that they've come up with, a honeydew. Hopefully I'll have that in next week. Noce zucchini. This is a nice green zucchini. Another one that's great with tempura and fried and parm on it. I grew up a lot of fried veggies, I guess. Oh, memories. Very good zucchini. This is another one, Ambassador, another nice green, long zucchini. Again, you can do whatever you do with zucchinis. You can just eat it. Eat it like a carrot. I think that's, oh, no, we've got an 8-ball. 8-ball's a different kind of zucchini. It's a ball. It tastes like a zucchini. If you cut it open, it looks like a zucchini, but it's just a ball off the vine. Very
They're
very
cute,
They're cute.
actually.
They're very cute. Very cute. Now over here, you want to talk corn? You want me to talk corn?
I'm gonna just let you keep.
I have a
You know varieties better than I
I have
do.
a question about the planting of squash. You know, on the seed packets, it always says in a hill. Is that important?
I think they do that for drainage purposes.
So if you buy, say you buy a plant, do you need to mound it? Or-
You don't have to.
It's probably it's gonna be more determined on your watering. If you tend to just maybe put on a sprinkler and water everything, you might want to hill them so they're drying out a little faster than some of the other things. But if you're watering individual plants and you're not going to overwater them, not as necessary.
So this is an Epiphany corn. Just a heads up, the only corn I bring in is going to be sweet. That is an edible corn. So this is very sweet. This is going to be a white and yellow combo kerneled corn. Ooh, that was a hard one. This one is, talk about that one last. This one is Crispy King corn. This is going to be a yellow corn. Another very nice sweet corn. Now this one is glass gem corn. It's going to be multicolored corn. This is not an edible. This is one you would grow as an ornamental in the fall. A lot of people love growing their own decorations. This would be
Really
a great
pretty.
decoration.
So corn, you can start corn from seed right now, but make sure you're checking out the days to harvest. We've got the honey and cream, which is a combination of white and yellow kernels. And this one says 84 days. So we're looking at about 3 months for this one. The butter gold is 63 days. So that's going to be a better choice for planting right now. And again, like we talked about before, wind pollinated, you want to have them in decent groups. So everybody's getting pollinated. When they grow their tassels on top, that's where the pollen's coming from. It lands on the silks, and each one of those silks is attached to a kernel. So we need to get pollen on every single one of those silks to have a full cob of corn. So planting in blocks, starting from seed, go for the lower number of days. You know, we're trying to go for the ones that are around 2 months at this point with direct seeding.
Okay. I forgot one more. This is a green globe artichoke. I love artichoke. My husband and I love artichoke. What I do with mine to make it an easy way to cook, I have a gas stove. So I char it over the burner. Then I put it on a oven pan, upside down, cut side up, drizzle olive oil on it, and put salt and pepper and a little garlic on it. Bake it in the oven, and then have aioli or horseradish. Good.
Yeah, artichokes can be perennial here, but one of the issues we tend to have, and I was bad to mine last year when I planted it. I put it where it doesn't have the great it doesn't have great drainage. So in the winter, when we have all the rain, it just stayed soggy, and it did not come back.
I'm guilty too. I put mine by my blueberries. I'm limited on space, so
you know,
mine's gonna go in a container this time.
A lot of people want their artichokes to be perennial and come back. Just make sure that you're putting it in a place where they're going to have really good drainage, so they're not sitting soggy in the winter. Also, if you have noticed microclimates in your yard and you know of a place that tends to stay warmer in the winter, that's also going to be a good bet.
And you know, we both knew better, and we still thought we could defy it.
I kind of used mine as an ornamental where I wanted it last year, because I think that when they get their big, cool, Jurassic-looking leaves, they're just pretty in the garden.
All right, you're up.
Okay, we have looks like winter squashes.
Yep.
Do we know the difference between summer and winter squash? We've got a quiet group
No.
today. So your zucchinis, those soft skinned, soft meat, like the zucchini and like crookneck, and things are going to be your summer squashes. They're ready and available to eat in the summer. Your winter squashes take a little bit longer to produce, and they're the ones that are good for storage and for eating through the winter.
And they're really thick, hard skin. Really thick.
So we have a table queen.
Very yummy. Huh?
Is table queen a Hubbard?
No, a Hubbard's a Hubbard.
Oh.
Table queen is like an acorn. Typically what I do with my acorns is I cut them in half, scoop them out, put them upside down on a cookie sheet with walls with a little bit of water so it kind of steams them until it's soft. Then I flip them over, put salt and pepper, butter, and brown sugar in it.
So here's another one that's just acorn. So your table queen is going to be an acorn that was selected for superior quality. I would probably have to read the tag to know why, but it's probably going to have to do with storage or flavor or size.
The table queen's a little bit larger than an acorn would be.
There you go.
Yeah.
So they selected for a larger growing acorn.
It's the queen of acorns.
Delicata.
Very popular.
What's special about delicata?
Delicata
Not
is
a
Steve's
squash person.
favorite. That you can do, just steam it, you can cube it, you can fry it, you can do all kinds of stuff with it. It's
I
really
tried
good.
every year to grow that, and it never grows.
Oh,
And I love it. It's my favorite squash.
yeah, yeah. When Steve lived next door, he grew it all the time. He and Pauline loved it, and they would get good size. Yeah.
Are you growing in the ground?
No. Should I grow it in the ground?
It should grow in a container.
It's always been in a container.
Yeah, it should grow in a container just fine. Certain things don't do well in a container, like corn. But no, that squashes have no trouble.
God, that's my favorite.
Let's see. We also have a spaghetti squash. This one in particular called pasta. Now I do eat this one and grow this one because it's a good healthy substitute for pastas.
Watch the carbs.
My chickens always enjoy the leftovers too.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you're not familiar, once you cook it, we always bake it. Then you can use your fork and run it through the meat of the squash, and it comes up in strings, and it's really yummy. Unless you're eating squash instead of processed flour.
Yeah.
And So it's good stuff, and I especially appreciate it in the summer because I'm not looking for heavy pasta and
Yeah,
stuff at
yeah,
that
you
time.
want hot dip.
Yeah. Hubbard. We got a Hubbard.
Okay. You know, we talked about the Hubbard?
Yeah.
Hubbard is another one that you can make like a squash pie. You can do mashed squash in replacement of a mashed potato. It's just an overall useful squash. Very sweet, very yummy, that you can just universally you can use it for so many different things.
Now, I imagine we're out of pumpkins at this point,
We are.
but pumpkins are another
Hard.
winter squash. So they fit into this winter squash category.
There's a lot that would fit in. We just don't have a lot.
Unfortunately, we scheduled this class a little bit late in the season when we're having a hard time getting our hands on some things.
Well, normally the growers have a second crop, but because our weather was not quite primo for them in the beginning, they have to start certain crops in the space of the second crop of veggies, and there wasn't enough time to do that crop of veggies because they had to get started on the other crop of whatever they use that space for. So, unfortunately, that was with every grower this year,
Yes.
even in Oregon.
So we're a little limited on some things.
Yeah, but we still have a selection.
We have a selection. I think we're going to do the class a little earlier next year.
Let's talk tomatoes.
Talk tomatoes. Okay, so tomatoes are split up into some different groups. First, we'll talk about determinate versus indeterminate. Determinate grows to a determined size, so generally smaller growing, more of a bush tomato, and generally sets its fruit and ripens its fruits around the same time. So you'll see that a lot with your Romas, but you can certainly find slicers and even a few cherries that way. And they're amazing for processing because you have a good big crop of tomatoes all at one time. So if you're canning them, you have a lot ready at one time.
And they're typically 5 feet or smaller.
Yeah, and if you're planning containers, that's something that you can grow in a little bit smaller container, because an indeterminate grows like a weed, and yes, you can chop on it, but it's going to try to come back and grow like a weed some more.
That when we plant.
So you want to have, if you're doing containers, they need to have a pretty good size
Yeah.
container.
I grow my tomatoes in 20-gallon, 1 tomato per 20-gallon pot.
I've grown
And by
mine
the end of the season,
15.
there's no soil; it's all roots.
Yeah, I grow mine in 15 because that's what I have, and
This
What's
is not
that?
a good example. This is just to show how to plant one.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah.
don't look at the
No, I'm
size.
just trying
just
to
look at what we're
figure
going to do
what
inside
you
of it.
you could do a determinate in that, but not an indeterminate.
Okay.
No, yeah.
How
So-
big is that pot?
This is a 10-gallon.
Oh, is that only? Oh, wow.
Yeah. So the other groupings that you find in tomatoes, which we already kind of touched on, are the slicers. So of course the big tomatoes, big to medium tomatoes that you can slice and eat your sandwiches, your burgers. Then you've got sauce tomatoes, the Romas, the San Marzano, some of those things that people make sauce of. Very common for canning.
I've used the San Marzanos and Romas just because I'm doing something and I need to slice something that's less juicy.
Yeah, that's one of the things I like about them too for cooking and stuff. 'Cause you don't have so much of the gel in the seeds. It's more meaty.
Yep.
But you can find that in slicers too. Like mortgage lifter
Black.
is more like meaty, black creme. Yeah. And then we've got the cherry tomatoes. Those ones that usually don't make it out of the garden because we're snacking on them the whole
Uh-huh.
time we're out there.
Betcha.
And so some of those seem to start producing a little bit earlier than things
Depends
like
on
the
which one,
slicers
yeah,
and stuff.
yeah.
And of course you get a lot more. So I love growing my cherry tomatoes. I don't have a lot of tomato
I
eaters
just
in the
love
house,
growing
so
tomatoes.
Yeah. so we're going to talk about planting tomatoes, pruning tomatoes, general tomato care, because they are a little bit more involved than some of these other things, but they're also a favorite that we love to grow.
You want me to plant one while you talk about? Well, I'm going to talk a little bit while I plant.
Yeah, so one of the major things, one is super fantastic. One of the major things with tomatoes is pruning. They can get diseases from the soil. We've already talked about fungal issues like septoria, which happens when it's wet. We had a very dry May. Usually we have more rain than we did this year. This was record-breaking year of less than an inch. So normally in May when we're planting our tomatoes and stuff, we have more water and we see more people coming in with pictures of septoria on their tomato plants. That's usually the lower leaves. We recommend taking those lower leaves off. Anything that is near or touching the soil, take those leaves off. And then making sure that it's somewhat open and you get some airflow in that plant. So if you're growing it really bushy, it's a good idea every once in a while to go in there and take some of those leaves that are growing into the plant, just take those out. You get some airflow. They're not out where they're producing food for the plant. They're not photosynthesizing because they're on the inside of the plant. You can go through and take all those out and leave all the leaves that are on the outside. There's another way to grow them is to do just one single leader and keep going up and staking it or trellising it that way, or let a couple of suckers come out and just do a few, so it's very open and airy. And then you can perhaps fit in more varieties of tomatoes into your garden because each tomato is not taking up as much space. They still produce really well, and your fruit ripens quickly because there's less leaf cover and the tomatoes are out in the sun.
So I'm going to plant one up in this container. I'm adding my EB Stone veggie fertilizer.
Keep in mind that tomatoes like their food.
They love anything like this loves to be fed. Annuals love to be fed. This is azomite. Now azomite are trace minerals. What they're going to do is help your plant retain and store nutrients so that as it's using its energy and its nutrients, it's drawing more up from the ground because you're feeding it with a good organic. So the ground's constantly feeding that plant so it can store those nutrients so it can continue doing what it needs to do in growing and
That
producing.
translates to tomatoes that are more nutritious and more flavorful. It's amazing.
And azomite, with anything edible, I started using this about 12 years ago and I will not garden without it. I use it for everything, not just edibles, but for everything. But anything edible, it enhances the flavor to a point that you cannot believe the difference.
And it's pretty cost effective too. These small boxes, this is $3.99, and that's what I've taken home because I'm gardening a small space. I don't have a ton of vegetables. I've been using the same box for a couple of seasons now.
Yeah, you just need to do it once a season. And this is oyster. Now, some of the soil comes in with trace amounts. I like to add extras. Oyster is going to add the calcium for your plants, and that's going to create good, strong plant cells. That's going to help your plants become very healthy and strong and stand up. It's like calcium is with us in our bones. The stronger our bones, the more we stand up. That's the same with the plants, with the cells.
And getting a decent amount of calcium available to the plant when you're first planting it is important as well, especially for our fruit producers that are producing from a flower. If you've done a lot of tomato growing, you may have run into tomato blossom end rot. So that's when the end of the tomato where the flower is, and the flower has fallen off, you start getting brown rot from that spot, and the whole bottom of the tomato starts rotting. Having enough calcium in the beginning stages is going to help with that.
Yes. Okay, so I'm going to bury this. I'm going to keep the first top 3 leaves. So I'm going to keep this one, and this one. I'm getting rid of the top. Bye-bye.
What she's doing there is getting a bushy plant.
So you can do this with your indeterminates as well. I do it with both. I want a nice, stocky plant. So you take all the foliage off that you don't want. Now I've got 4. We're going to take this one off. Okay.
So if you've looked at a tomato stem, it's got little white hairs all running up and down
All
it.
fuzzy.
So those little stems, once you bury this portion of the stem, those will turn into roots, and you'll have a much bigger support system for your plant.
And a much happier tomato. Alright, there it goes.
So
Wow.
the things she's doing here
What?
are getting a much bigger root system by burying the stem, and by pinching off the top here, every crotch where you have the leaf meeting the stem is going to grow a sprout of a new stem. So she's going to have 3 new stems coming out of here because she pinched this, and it's going to put its energy into growing there because we took that major growth point. If you left that major growth point up at the top, it's going to send its energy into the top and keep growing up. So she's going to start out with a bushy plant with more stems and more growth from down low.
So if you're growing in like a greenhouse with like trellising, would you still pinch the? Because then you're gonna want it to
It's up to
climb.
you on if you want it to climb.
A lot of people do one tall guy and pinched out the sprouts and just do one long one with a support at the top. And a lot of people use a string hanging from the support and just bury the string down in the ground with this root ball, and then twist the string around, and as the tomato grows, keep twisting it around the string, and the string supports it. So that in that case, you're going with one long leader, and you're pinching out, like, I don't know if you can see because these are baby, but there's little sprouts coming in where these leaves are. You would be pinching those out because you don't want more stems.